You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome back to another episode of Ethnosynology. This will be part 2 of the interview with Bradley Rydholm, who is the curator and creator of the Nature Is Not Metal page. If you did not listen to the part 1 of this episode, please go back and do that to get some context to the rest of the conversation we're having here. But as I said in the beginning of episode 1 of this 2-part series, it's one of my favorite interviews I've had where we start talking really philosophically about nature and a human's relations to it and the animal species that we cohabitate the earth with. So please go back and listen to that, and please enjoy the rest of the interview with Bradley Rydholm. This is a great one. Thank you.
You had mentioned something about the relationship with humans and domestic animals. Was it just specifically in LA, or do you meant domestic animals like birds and coyotes in LA or something? Or
I was talking about how people perceive domestic animals as being more they have a higher capacity for individual personalities and stuff, because a lot of people they're I got a dog and I never realized how much individuality they have, or whatever. I heard someone say that the other day, which I think for dog lovers, they're obviously. But my point is just the same is true for wild animals. If you're someone who spends your time whale watching or observing wolves, and you're a naturalist who's an expert at that, that there's a very large difference in individuality. Okay. And my point with that idea about domestic versus wild animals is I think the more you observe wild animals, the more you see them as just as they have the same capacity for social lives, socially complex lives as dogs or whatever. And people are really quick to deny that in wild animals. And, if you say that, there's kind of this knee-jerk reaction that you're just anthropomorphizing. But I'm you're actually not being very scientific, because if you ask people who are experts on wolves or whales or whatever, they can tell you that there's very specific roles they play, very unique personalities. There's a guy that I read his book a long time ago, but he talks a lot about that. And his name's Safina. And he wrote a book called Beyond Words, where he's talking about wolf and whale social dynamics. Sick. And it's a great book. It's written very colloquially. It's very easy to understand, but there's a lot of information in it. But he kind of talks about how not only do whales and elephants and wolves understand their own dynamics, who's reliable, who's unreliable, who's quick to anger or whatever, but they also understand social dynamics of other species. So the point being a whale, a wolf, an elephant, they know who's in charge of the humans. So if they're watching a tourist group, they immediately understand who's leading the tour, Yeah. The point being if they're upset, they know who to direct their noises at being get out of here or whatever. They're not going to some random tourist, they're going to the tour guide. I think is one of the takeaways that I got is if you spend time with them, that they're not just aware of their own unique personalities and they have their own kind of social reality, but they're pretty aware of yours too, Yeah,
that makes total sense, especially, I guess, to tie it back to dog domestication. It's humans are such social primates with some kind of hierarchy, whether it was egalitarian or not at the time, we don't know, but there's some pecking order.
Yeah.
And wolves are very social and have their own kind of pecking order. So it just made sense that humans and dogs are interact in that sense. But you got me curious now, because I've seen multiple videos of elephants on a safari, charging the convoy or whatever, the Humvee. And they do go right after they know the driver. Cause
I'm not an expert on elephants or anything too, but I know that there's a ton of information there that would be relevant. I think a lot of male elephants are more solitary and have a lot more aggression when it comes to being in their space versus I've read some people's accounts of their time with elephants as being the pack led by a matriarch is a lot more tolerant, but with boundaries that the humans feel is pretty communicated, the elephants get to know who's there. And I would assume that a lot of the charging and stuff probably comes from males outside of the pack, although I really couldn't say for certain.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I see that usually on Nature is Metal, things
Yeah,
like that,
exactly.
or some kind of page like that. I meant to ask you that too in the beginning, but the name of your page was to be opposite of that.
Yeah, it was a reference. It was basically being funny. I mean, it's a meme page, and the name was kind of a meme as well because, there's this nature is metal idea that nature is gory and it's, this survival of the fittest. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that it is a part of nature while also acknowledging that there's the inverse. And I think I see it as like a dialectic or a yin and yang. I think you couldn't have one without the other. I think the more metal that nature is, the more nurturing is required. So like I make the point that like our apex predators, like the predators that humans think of as like, king of the jungle or whatever, they actually require the most like nurturing behavior and social learning. So like orca whales, for example, have this like incredibly cooperative social lifestyle, but same with wolves. Wolves are, I think like people who are like wolf experts almost see them as like incredibly, I don't know, sentimental creatures. There's a lot of like group bonding and like the kind of like play and all these species like take care of their young in very like nurturing ways. And it seems to be like the more cooperative a species is, like orca whales or wolves, the more dominant they are in an ecosystem as far as like the traditional idea of a food chain. So yeah, I think it was like me kind of making that point of like, yeah, nature is metal and also nature is not metal in the sense that it's very cooperative. And of course it's also just a meme, like for me to share the kind of like silly like nature videos and viral videos. But yeah, it wasn't so much a rebuttal as it was like a reference, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think what made me invite you on the pod the other day, or think to invite you, is you had shared that, I didn't know it was you at first, but it was like, leave if you don't honor the moon or something like that.
Oh,
and I was like, what the hell is this? And then I scrolled through and I was like, oh, this is Bradley. And I was going through, but then reading your caption at the bottom, it was like, that was one of your better things you've ever written. And I can't remember what the hell I asked you 5 minutes ago. I can't remember what you wrote, but it was really good. Can you, I guess, speak to the writing stuff you're doing?
Oh yeah. Oh, so that was actually from David Abram, The Spell of the Sensuous. And so that was like one of the books that was really formative to me and got me like thinking about ecology in this way. But this book, I mean, really there's like, it's a dense book. There's a lot there, but he talks about like ecology as being participatory. So that quote was kind of about the idea where he's like, we only developed our senses because we are something that can be sensed. Like we are part of the sensing world. So he's kind of like, when you are touching, you're also being touched. And when you're observing, you're also being observed. And there's this kind of like being in and a part of a landscape that's like inherent in what it means to be human. So that's where that was coming from. And yeah, I think maybe the reason why you didn't know it was me at first, because I actually like put my name on my page as I've like tried to be on good terms with Instagram. And so I switched to the name Bradley. Well, the handle is still Nature is Not Metal, but I've put my name as how there's like a name and then there's a handle?
Yeah, like mine's David Ian Halbert's Ethno. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I have right now because I had to switch. But
are they trying to make sure you're a person?
I've had a bunch of issues with Instagram, but
your account got taken down.
They zucked me, as the kids say.
As the kids say. Before, I guess what I wanted to say with that too, and continue, but I was thoroughly impressed with your comeback. Like you have more followers than me, I think now, and it's like overnight, like you just, whatever format you had, you stuck to it and it just worked. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, well, I have a lot to say about that. One is that I think a lot of people really loved the page as it was. And so there was a lot of people who just found me because they're like, wait, what happened to this page? The other thing is that I am not doing that anymore. I think a lot of people aren't happy that the page is going through changes. So I'm in a bit of a transition and it is what it is. But the page, it became like a part of my personal page, a part of my business. Like there's a lot of things happening with it. So it's kind of a weird,
Yeah, at that same juncture.
yeah. It's a lot to deal with. And I'm kind of like, whatever, the people who want to stay will stay, and the people who don't, oh well.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. But so, yeah, I try to write little pieces that I want to use Instagram for what it is, which is like an image-based platform, and it's short form content. And my way of like staying true to have a message is like sprinkle in ideas. So that's what that was. I think the meme was like, yeah, it was like a pastor being like, unfollow 3 people whose posts don't honor God or whatever. And I was like, I just changed it to 3 posts who don't honor the moon. And
that's right. That's what it was.
Yeah, which I just thought was funny. And then, yeah, I put that quote there because I was like thinking about, actually, shout out to Sophie Strand, who actually has like a brilliant page on Instagram where Sophie is a writer, but she also like dabbles in meme curation too. A lot of her page is her writing, and a lot of her page is like sharing memes and, you know, curated content. But I was in New York at like a somewhat of a gathering, conference, retreat style thing, and she gave a talk.
I'm laughing because my friends that follow you, I'll follow her. Sorry.
Yeah.
You go. Yeah.
She writes like fiction, and she was talking about how like the importance of love stories because they're the stories that last. And she was talking about like having love stories towards like the land and stuff. And I was like reflecting on my Instagram page, and I was like, like I wonder how much of my Instagram page has been like my, in a way, just like expressing my love for the land. And then that had me nostalgic about like the early like books that I had read that made me like go on this, I don't know, radicalization towards loving the land. And that book was one of them. I mean, like of all the books that I've read, Spell of the Sensuous by David Abram is like one of the top. And it's funny because the first time I read it, I like forgot what argument he was even making because so many of his anecdotes were so interesting. It's like, he's just like writing so much stuff into it that I thought was interesting that I totally lost his argument. And I forgot that he's making this like bigger point about like language. And I was really just like lost in the sauce. And yeah, that's highly recommend that book. Very fascinating. Actually, this is like a segue to your area of research, because one of the claims he's making, and I think a lot of philosophers and anthropologists have returned to this like religious question, which is like, what the fuck happened to humans? Like, why are we like this? And like religions and philosophers, like during the Enlightenment, kind of go to this question of like, how did we fall this hard from grace? And I think that question is back. And now anthropologists are like, you know, was it agriculture? Was it cities? Was it organized religion? Like, what was it that made us get to this point where now, you know, our administration is run by like the biggest criminals in the world, and like you can't do anything about it, and you know, all new wealth from the last 10 years has gone straight to like 5 families.
2 people.
And like, why are we here? And his idea for why we're so alienated from nature is basically like, he points to written language. So he's like, our language used to come from the earth. And he talks about the process of like language was like really embedded in the land. You know, you go around the world, North America, Africa, South America, Central America, wherever you go, you're going to like hear people with a tongue that sounds different from the other regions. And the idea is like, this is emerging from the earth. In the same way like foods and stuff emerge from the earth. What spices do you have? What foods are available? So cultures come from the earth. And then he's like, the first written languages, basically you have like, you know, the S is the shape of a snake because it's written after a snake. What sound does the snake make? It's, and that's what the S makes. And so you have like languages that are a direct reference to the earth. And then we abstract another step up and we forget that the S is a snake and it's just a sound that makes, and then we have philosophy and it stops being a reference to the world. And now it's like Foucault is just a reference to other philosophers who are a reference to other philosophers. And now we found ourselves like abstracted so far from the earth that we have really no relationship to it. He's making that point. I don't know if I fully buy that's the reason, but I found it compelling that it's one reason that we've like gotten this far from some like state of grace.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I jokingly, like in a meme, refer to it as agriculture being our biggest mistake, but like it just kind of, not that it's a mistake, it's just the tipping point. Like if you look at any population graph, it's like this and then it's this, like as soon as agriculture's there. And whether that is we're losing our, zoological selves in that sense, where like we were hominid hunter-gatherers foraging on a landscape, manipulating our environments in small ways to survive, versus staying in one spot, not having to hunt and gather. You're right there collecting your calories in a 1 mile plot next to you. And then when that plot is infertile or it's burned or it doesn't grow that year, well, now you got to take it from your neighbors and you got to go do that. And that just cascades into, it's just population, I think. But I don't know. And then it's like, I think back to, I know it's problematic to assign all human behavior to chimps, but like Goodall observed, like they just beat the shit out of each other for like no reason sometimes, or go to war and kill, like in horrible ways. And like, I think she put it in a good way. It's like, not that every human is violent, we have the capacity for it. And with all those resources in one spot, you have to take it from someone else. And like, that's completely real across North America about 1,000 years ago. Like there's just warfare, and it's the little ice age hits and like all the crops die. And after everyone just got corn, and then they just start bashing each other. It's really weird. I don't know. And like, whether it's agriculture or whether it's something in it, I don't know. It's just, or it's population, it's something. But you do lose that connection because you become urbanized. Like you're in one local spot, even if it's a palisaded village in upstate New York, or, Iraq in like the Mesopotamia or something,
Did you read Goliath's Curse?
No, I'm going to write that down too.
Okay. That was like one of the recent like anthropology books written, but I didn't read it. So I shouldn't give a summary of it. I should know better than to do that. But anyway,
I'll put it in the description though, at least.
It's another one of the like things that's kind of grappling with this question of like what happened, and talking about like the idea of agriculture and whether or not that's like a fair to point at
like argument. Yeah. Okay. I'll give that a shot.
But I don't know. I'm not an anthropologist, so I'm not like well schooled in all of it.
You're very like knowledgeable about like nature and the human stuff though. It's compelling to hear you like see your post and what you're saying now.
Thank you. I'm curious about like the book, and I actually like genuinely, it's funny to say this while I'm on the podcast with you, but I was like, I got to get my hands on that because I'm like super curious. And it's actually like super related to what I talked about on Nature is Not Metal for so long, like the relationship between humans and animals, especially dogs. And I'm curious. But then again, you probably talk about it on your podcast quite a bit, right?
Well, it's not done yet. And like, we're still shopping with like different editors and stuff, but it's like the outline, the skeleton of like, I have it written pretty much, but like, I don't talk about it too much, but I will say it's like the human dog story and like how that comes about. And then, but what's interesting is like when the agency contacted me about writing a book, cause she heard my ologies, she's then like, okay, dog domestication, we got it. But like, it has to have some kind of theme, or like if someone at Barnes and Noble picks it up, what do they what do they learn? And we kind of decided on like this nature aspect, like a dog from its origins of, creeping primate villages looking for scraps or whatever, like to get calories when it's an outcasted wolf and it needs human food, to today, it's like if you live in like Brooklyn, or Manhattan, Hong Kong, or like LA, some people don't ever leave Manhattan their whole life or whatever, but they do touch a dog in the day, and it's the only piece of nature they touch. Like my plants are fake in my house because I kill them on accident or I drown them. But like my dog was the only, especially during COVID when I didn't have a partner, it was long distance, but like just in my house at the time, just me and him. And like, I'm the only not human, but a dog I interacted with is that. So part of the way the book goes is like saying that at the end, it's like they are these mythological creatures like Anubis and Cerberus that are like spiritual guides, but they also just are this last remaining artifact for some people of the time when we were like zoological and like among nature. And I don't think people see them that way. They're also a technology, and I go on about that. But for this pod, yeah, like they're just a piece of nature in your house. And like with the bird you had too, it's like a similar thing. Like I don't know, you probably felt super nurturing and caring and like connected to the planet or something. So I don't know. And I guess I'll end with this too, but like primates have to groom each other. They have to socialize. They have to do that. And like, you don't just go up to your sister or your mom and like pick lice out of her hair anymore. Like we don't do that, but I do like contagiously rough up any dog I see and like have this way. And it's like any human does that unless it's societal things of not to touch a dog. But yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of where it goes with that. And that's, you know, biology, archaeology, a lot of it, but that would be, I think, the central theme.
You know, I have two questions for you from that because I'm really curious about your thoughts on this because my, like, I don't know, social group in grad school have like some hard lines on how they think about like philosophy that would touch on this. One of them would be, so you keep using the word zoological, like when humans were zoological. So then my question would be like, what's the utility in that word? Because humans haven't really changed as a species, but our lifestyles have. And then where do you draw the line between nature and culture? And because you say like dogs are the only part of nature that people touch, meaning that like our urban lives are not nature. And I had a lot of like colleagues or peers in grad school who would be like, well, the building is nature, you know? And the argument is that, you know, we know a bee is a part of nature and therefore the beehive is nature. And so if humans are an animal, then why is our, you know, dwelling place not nature? And I actually I read a lot of arguments about this when I was in grad school because I was in this like freak niche, you know, grad program where we're like reading philosophy of like what is nature, and there's a lot of argument there about like, is a city nature? Is the human dwelling the same as a beaver dwelling? What's different about it? And ultimately I'm pretty sympathetic to there's three main arguments. One is like, no, a city is not nature, you idiots. A forest is nature and a city is the perversion of, you know, of nature. There's like that kind of hard line. There's the other side, which I find is typically like the maybe more like woke approach to it all, is like we're all a part of nature. That's maybe the more like aligned with like a kind of like social justice perspective and stuff, is that the city is just another ecosystem. And then there's like an emerging rebuttal to all of this that I feel very sympathetic to, which is like, yeah, like humans are an animal species and our dwelling place is a extension of us, and therefore, you know, is a animal-made dwelling place. But at the same time, one, it's kind of unreasonable to like not use language that's colloquial for most people on the planet. Like, why have this like super academic take when most people are going to like clearly understand nature as like out there and LA is not nature? So one, like, why have this really like elitist take on it? But two, when you claim everything is nature, it has this like adverse effect where people can be like, okay, cool, well, LA's nature, so we don't have to take care of, you know, old growth because everything we do is it's all still nature. So there's this like dialogue happening. I'm curious to like what your thoughts are of that.
Okay, multiple answers there. I'm trying to keep track. Put a pin in Tolkien. I had that pop in my head, but it's the zoological part. I remember like when the editor went through my book, I said our truest, like most zoological selves, several, because it just sounded cool to me. But then they were like, what does this mean? You keep saying that. And my point with that is just like, I didn't want to just keep saying primate the whole time, but like a tool using primate that forages the landscape looking for calories, seek to, you know, have enough energy to reproduce and pass on genetics. Like that's the Darwinian view of biological life. So humans are not detached from that, and like very clearly, like we need to eat, we need to reproduce, and we need to survive to reproduce. But you don't have to reproduce, but those urges are there. And I was just trying to explain in the book, like, that the time when wolves first encroached onto human villages, like they got to Siberia, they left Africa, got to Siberia, and it's like, okay, how do we survive? How do we get food? And that came from hunting animals and then using their fur to keep warm themselves and just manipulate your environment. And that is the same for any primate, but specifically apes make nests. That's like monkeys do too, but all apes make nests for some reason. And that is manipulating your environment, whether it's banana leaves, sticks, twigs, making a burrow or something. And I gave this talk to, I think they were third graders. They were 8, whatever age that is. My friend was like, yeah, just give your dog domestication talk. They're 8, by the way. And I was like, shit. So I just kind of condensed it down, being like, primates make nests, humans are primates. And then I showed them like a chimp making a nest and then a yurt made of mammoth hide, like an illustration. And I saw this kid go, oh, because it's like a nest. And it was snowing that day. And I pointed outside and I was like, see, we're in a big nest. It's keeping us isolated from the snow. So to get to your next question there, I don't know. Concrete is something pulled from the environment and molded and shaped, and it's a mixture of chemicals. But how different philosophically is that from banana leaves and an orangutan in Borneo? It's still a nest to protect you. I think once it's cities and urban, and like there's a difference between Zambia and like Rome, like ancient Rome. It's a concrete jungle, I guess, or Manhattan, whereas like, I don't know. And I get the put a pin in Tolkien. I meant it's like the Shire in the book, and like he's all about nature, and like Isengard is like the metaphor for industrialization ruining the English countryside. The Shire is nature to me, like gardening, living with your family and your primate group, doing that. Whereas ripping down all the trees to industrialize, like the war machine, which is what Isengard is in the book, like that is not nature, if that makes, because you're destroying it. So somewhere in there is a line, I think, of like what maybe that's metallurgy, making things out of metal, but then that gets into the argument of like, okay, well then metal means you're more advanced than stone or something. So it's hard to. It is a philosophical debate, and like anything, especially like species, it's a spectrum, and I don't know where to land. Am I making sense, or am I just
Totally.
yapping?
I think the I don't know is such a wise answer, because like it really is just complicated, and it's one of those things that requires like judgment and personal experience more than there's like an easy like there's no like quantitative thing that we can point to and be like, see, this is why this perspective is right. There's a lot of judgment that goes into it, but yeah, it's curious, and it's like it's hotly contested right now. I think there's like entire philosophical schools of thought that like debate this. There's like the post-humanities is like a philosophical area that argue this, but yeah, I don't know. The Tolkien thing is interesting because I feel so, my own like worldview is like, I really relate a lot to like the idea of like fuck Isengard and like,
Yeah.
but the Shire is cool.
That's a good bumper sticker.
Yeah. But it's like, maybe this is trite to say, and this is something that everybody's already thought of, but maybe not. But there's actually so many animal species that alter their environment. And like the idea of altering an environment, like, there's all these times where philosophers are like, well, the thing that separates humans from animals is that humans do this. And then there's always like some biologist who's like, dude, there's like 50 species who do that same thing, and it's like one of them was always building their environment. And it's like bowerbirds and beavers and, primates and all these groups, they do the same thing. But yeah, some of them, they get so in depth. It's like the bowerbird example of like creating just an aesthetic display in their home. It's like, it's not just like building a nest. It's like organizing these piles of like blue and red or purple or whatever. I don't know if you've seen them, but it's like, so it's not only like creating like a practical place that they're gonna, have a dwelling spot, but it's also like, I'm gonna make it beautiful. Like I'm gonna put, dressings on the windows and, so the baddies come and find me. And Like, yeah, there's just so much of that in non-human species. And so, but the other thing, I think I differ. I think if I were to write a book or like go deeper on my Substack, like one of the things that's really on my mind is like, I really stopped agreeing with most people who are like on my side, like environmentalists and stuff. There's like this tension that I have where I'm like I hate Isengard, right? But I also think that there's this like rhetoric of like only humans go in and destroy this or that. And I'm like,
Right.
you know, what's funny is that I don't think that's true. And I think that like we are just an animal. And when you really like escape that dualism of like there's humans and there's animals, there's kind of like a forgiveness that I have for humans for destroying everything. And because, and I think this like earth-based cultures or like indigenous cultures, there's like a different take on ethics a lot of times where like instead of stories of good and evil, there's like a trickster or like someone who's kind of like an idiot and his idiocy causes like problems. And you know, you have
pretty common.
you have like the coyote or the, you know, the crow or like all these things, but like oftentimes the coyote is just out there doing shit, and then next thing you know, the dam is broken or whatever, right? There's this big problem. But I've thought recently of like the caracara bird. They're just like, they're cheeky. They're like cats. Like, I'm just going to knock the glass off the table for no reason. And I think humans are just like that. And like, there's animals like that where they're just like playful. They want more. There's a bird, it's kind of like a famous example, a bird of prey that like picks up sticks that are on fire to spread them to new areas so that it can like catch the grasshoppers who are fleeing.
I saw that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is my example of like, that bird is just trying to get more grasshoppers. In doing so, he could really fuck up a lot of homes. I don't know, maybe the poor coyote den who just has newborn pups is in this field that's now on fire because this idiot bird just dropped the sticks.
Yeah, or like the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah, exactly. And I think humans are just kind of like that. They're just like this idiot bird who's like, I'm going to get a ton of grasshoppers, and next thing you know, everybody else's house is on fire. Yeah. And I don't know, it's both an elitist thing to say and very opposite of elitist, where I'm like, I think we are just kind of dumb and short-sighted, and I have a lot of hope for humans to like figure our stuff out and be sustainable. But I'm also like, sometimes we're just dropping sticks on fire in the middle of a field because we want a little extra, you know, meat. And that's me getting like really non-dualist. I'm like, we are just like one of those species, kind of just like, hey, let's start this fire because we'll get even more stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, man. I'm right there with you. Like, and I've said this in an Instagram post or video, but like, we're not that special. We just have the ability to think so.
Right.
And like, if there's life on other planets, there's probably something in the infinite stars that are out there, something a little less, you know, quote unquote, intelligent than us, or a little more. And who's to say like I'm more Neanderthal than whatever comes next after human or something like that. But like, we just have the ability to tell ourselves like what intelligence is. And that's getting super deep and philosophical, but like, I can't fly like a peregrine falcon at all. Like, he is exceptionally good at that. And finches are very good at like using, you know, sticks or whatever to get larvae out of. Is that the right bird? Is it finches that do that? Yeah. Whatever Darwin observed, something with larvae. Yeah. But yeah, like I'm not good at that, using my mouth to do it, you know? So it's like, it's just relative. I don't know. I'm getting on more of a tangent, but yeah, I can't disagree. Like, we have to wrap soon, but the, observing chimps at the zoo when I was in college, like I would just watch the baby chimp touch everything, see what breaks, bang on the glass, put everything in his mouth, like what's food, what's not, what does what. And like, yeah, same thing, like just humans prod in their environment to figure out what's going on, just like your cat knocks the glass out. That's a very good example. Yeah. Just to see what happens. Right, and that's social testing with people. And yeah, just to see what happens is like, that's humans. I think, you know, some of that is pathological and we need to check ourselves and humble ourselves, and hopefully we get that in adulthood. But yeah, if you watch human kids, they just got to see what happens. And yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah, as a boy, I grew up in a neighborhood with tons of boys running around the neighborhood, and it was just like, we're gonna throw this in the street just to see what happens. You know,
exactly.
It's like, it's just nonstop like shenanigans. And I think that humans and coyotes really fit together in that way. And, you know, that's not a problem when humans are not the biggest influence over an ecosystem, but like, yeah, it's, and I do think, you know, we can be responsible. And to be clear, I hope that we are responsible and we learn. But yeah, we are at the end of the day another species, and we're not the only one that's short-sighted.
I was going to close with like, what was one of your favorite experiences with one of your trips or whatever, but I guess I'll close with, and you might have just said it. I'll phrase it this way. I usually ask, what does it mean to be human? But like, what to you is the human and nature? What's it mean to be human, I guess? And then like tie that in with nature and the future or something.
Yeah, that's the hardest question.
You're about to spit fire, I know it.
No. What does it mean to be human? I really don't know, I think. But if maybe it's something that it'll be like something I write about and am able to give like a really thoughtful answer. But I think what separates humans truly is the way we develop individuals. I think I'm really convinced that humans have stages in their journey of growth, and that we need technologies. In the same way dogs are a technology. I think like this, you know, something you think a lot about. I don't know if we agree or disagree on this, but I think the cool thing about dogs for me is that they're a technology for friendship. Like we have dogs not to hunt for food anymore, but to like have affection and loyalty and all these things in our lives. Like they're kind of a supplement to our lives. But I think like one of the main technologies of being human was like, I believe that there was a universal experience across cultures of like rites of passage and this like depth work which preceded psychology. Before there was like therapists and stuff, there was like group experiences of, okay, you have been the coyote knocking shit over, the cat pushing things off the table, you were the boy, and that's fine, but now it's time to develop. So I think fundamentally what's really different about us as animals is that we have had these technologies that help us grow into greater responsibility and care for the natural world. I really believe that cultures around the world had elders that taught people that we are just one part of the larger planetary ecosystem. And I think that the rites of passage that were eerily similar and very involved and chaotic, and now we look at them as like barbaric or whatever, you know, when people observe them, we're like, oh my God, they're inflicting pain or whatever. But I think that the reason why there were so many of these and they were so involved and we found them on every continent was because that was a technology to develop our humanity. And I think we've lost it, and I think we need it. And there's a lot of eco-psychologists who think that we live in like an adolescent culture because we lost the technologies that move people from adolescence into adulthood. And I'm really convinced by it. I read a lot of like eco-psychologists who are really convinced that like that's part of this fall from grace that everybody's like wondering about, is like we used to have these ways that we grew up as individuals, and that was like a part of being human. It's like you can be an idiot for your whole life, and that's a very human thing, but a lot of people develop into really like mature, responsible, nurturing adults. And a big part of whether or not that happens is the technologies, ancient technologies that we don't really have access to anymore. That's my like answer. I don't know if it's a good one, but I have been thinking a lot about how like a part of what it means to be human is like this progression of personality over time, and rites of passage and like this kind of like reflection and the use of like plant medicines and stuff. I do think that's a part of what it means to be human, and that's what one of the things that like separates us, or what that's distinct about being human.
So that was fire. To make sure I'm hearing you correctly, so like storytelling in connection with the earth is the technology you're referring to.
Yeah, storytelling, group experiences, like shadow work. I think like this deep reflection work that was like really common in cultures at one time was a technology that they developed. And in the same way, like agriculture is a technology that we developed, but we lost that technology. Yeah, I think storytelling is obviously a technology that's like integral to being human. in the same way these
Yeah.
like rites of passage were. Yeah.
Well, damn, dude, I feel like we just got cooking. I could talk to you for like
I
4
know.
hours on this.
Do a
I
follow.
have to have you on again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like you're a regular, dude. This was awesome. I had like goosebumps for some of that. Yeah, man. So I guess we got to end it. But where can people find you? And you had a Substack, right?
Oh man, I haven't been on the Substack. I do have one. I'm hoping to get back to it, but I've been like doing all the trips. You can find me at Nature Is Not Metal, at Nature Is Not Metal on Instagram, or just search my name, Bradley Rydholm. And I host trips under my business, Green Night. It's Green Night Outdoor Club on Instagram. And if you follow either one of those, you can eventually come across my writing, and hopefully I can get back to that. And I write a lot about nature and culture, and hopefully, actually the last thing that I started writing, which I'm like really eager to finish, was on rites of passage. And it's something that I'm like really wanting to put my crazy thoughts into the world. So, yeah.
Love that, dude.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I love your page, and I'm like super excited that you got this book coming out.
Thanks, dude. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be like another year or two, but I'm excited. Appreciate it. And yeah, you should definitely do a podcast or something. You're very good at speaking. This was great. Yeah, man. All right. So if you're watching the YouTube version, please subscribe, do the whole thing, like, comment, let me know what you think of me and Bradley's conversation. If you're on the podcast network, you can listen to any other episode or any other show on the Archaeology Podcast Network. And it is fluent.pet/David for the History of Dogs course if you want to check out the 3-hour course on History of Dogs. So with that, we are out.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. The Archaeology Podcast Network's chief editor is Rachel Roden. Our executive producer is Ashley Airy. Our social media and newsletter coordinator is Matilda Siebrecht. The APN was founded by Chris Webster and Tristan Boyle on December 1st, 2014. We're supported by our amazing podcast hosts, many volunteers, and listeners like you. Check out membership at www.archpodnet.com/members.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.